afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to What the Why with Barbara Ann on RVN Television. If you haven't seen us before, our show features conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they figured things out. Maybe you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or you feel stuck and you want to get unstuck in your business, your job, or your life. All of our guests have something in common with you. At some point in their lives, they felt similarly in one way or another, and today is no exception. Please join us in welcoming Angela Legh to the show. Angela is an international best-selling author with 10 published books. Her most recent book is a 90-day journal that prompts users into self-love. She's been featured in USA Today. She's a syndicated Los Angeles Tribune newspaper and magazine columnist, and she has countless other media exposures. Yet, Angela is best known as the author of her children's fantasy book, The Bella Santini Chronicles, which gives children and their parents tools and techniques for emotional balance. For over 50 years, Angela experienced abuse, bullying, and belittlement, and through that exposure, she developed emotional management methods. Angela is a conscious parenting consultant who has shared the stage with Les Brown, Dr. John DeMartini, Bernardo Moya, Michael Beckwith, Joe Vitale, Allison Larson, Mo Rock, Dave Fagan, and many others. Angela has done everything from speaking to high school students about emotional intelligence to co-hosting a television show on Thriving Women Network. Her most current project is producing a show on Thriving Women Network entitled Children's Lives Matter. When Angela isn't writing children's stories or magazine articles, she can be found hiking in the beautiful wilderness of Taos, New Mexico. So without further ado, please join me in a round of applause welcoming Angela Legh via Zoom from New Mexico in the USA, now that we're international, to our show. So welcome, yay!
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. I mean, you've been on quite a journey. And of course, one of the main things we do, is we always start at the beginning of the journey. So, I don't know that you thought you would be all of these amazing things when you were little. What did little Angela want to be when she was growing up?
You know, it's funny, I wanted to be a writer.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, I feel like I should have a bell. Ding, 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 ding. Somebody actually accomplished what they wanted to do when they were little. So, okay. Well, but it was an interesting series of twists and turns from little Angela who wanted to be a writer to now. So, how did you get from little Angela who dreamed of being a writer to Angela who is a writer?
Oh boy, that was a long journey. You know, the little 7-year-old me who started writing a story, she had dreams and life intervenes. So, you know, my parents got divorced. It was actually a good thing because my dad was a raging alcoholic. My mom, she's wonderful. But the divorce, you know, caused a change in my life. And then I grew up and I decided I needed to get a job that paid. And so I went into the loan industry and stayed there for 15, 20 years, became a stay-at-home mom for a long time. And then once my kids were in school, I went and got a job, middle management and government, teaching employees how to be safe. And all of those things did, you know, pay the bills, they were lucrative, but they didn't fill that creative need within me. And in, 2017, there was a wildfire that destroyed my house in Northern California.
Oh, wow.
That put me into a dark night of the soul where I started questioning, hey, you know, if life can change that significantly in 10 minutes, then am I doing what I want in life? Am I living the life I want to live? And the answer was, no, you're not.
Wow.
So it took some courage. It took me probably 6 months to work up the courage to leave the marriage that I was in and leave my job and start this career of writing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of budding writers out there. I've had a number of writers on the show.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't just start writing, you've become rather successful. So, how did you encourage yourself to step outside and pursue what you really wanted to do, as opposed to staying in that safe place where so often people get stuck?
Yeah. What I call the comfort couch.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We build fairy tales on the other side of the room, and we sit on that comfort couch and look at this dream and to think we want to reach that. But to get off the couch and step into this land, no man's land of discomfort, it's a hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that if that wildfire had not turned my life upside down, I would have stayed in that miserable marriage. I would have stayed in the job that didn't fulfill me. And it took that push from God that just said, you got to look at your life and try something new, to get me to try and reach that fairy tale castle.
Which is fantastic. So did you first go into, so let me reframe that. Was journalism the path for you, or was writing the book the path for you, or did you do them simultaneously? How did that journey look?
Yeah, the books were the path for me. So I wrote the first book and published it. I wrote the second book and published it. The third book, I connected with a different publisher, and he offered me the opportunity to open up into journalism. So that was a way for me to spread my message to parents that, emotions are something that we all need to feel, that repressing emotions actually leads to all kinds of behaviors that are detrimental to yourself and others. And so just being able to spread that message is important to me.
Which is awesome. And I mean, and you don't just write for any paper. I mean, on a national level, a lot of people know what the Los Angeles Tribune is, as well as the magazine. So, how did you decide to pursue journalism on that level?
Well, it's interesting because when I signed the publishing contract for my third book, the publisher was actually working with the Los Angeles Tribune to help promote the Los Angeles Tribune, because his role is publisher and publicity. So I signed on with him because not a lot of publishers will help you with publicity. Mm-hmm. And so I saw some value there. He's the one who had me write the first article for the Los Angeles Tribune. And then the editorial board really liked what I wrote because it was giving parents tools for dealing with anxiety for kids, etc. And they asked me to submit more articles. So over the course of a year, I probably submitted 10 or 12, maybe one a month to the Tribune. And by the end of that time, they said, yeah, you can just send us articles at will. You're a columnist. So
wow,
that's where I am now.
Wow. And what's interesting is you talk about the tools as parents. One of my team members has 2 little ones, and she's a big proponent of conscious parenting. And
Beautiful.
so I would love for you to delve into how you found your path into conscious parenting. And then probably what will happen is after the break for our sponsors, we'll actually get into what it is in more detail. So,
Okay.
so what?
So,
go ahead.
going back to my father, who was a raging alcoholic, and he was very abusive. He was really the monster who actually lived in my house. And so that was like the training ground for me to truly understand emotions and emotional repression. Because drinking alcohol is a vehicle through which people try to numb how they feel. And so I could see that my father's unhappiness, that his feelings of not being enough, which were handed to him by his father, I could see that that was the impetus for him to drink alcohol. And when he drank alcohol, his rage became so bitter and all embroiling. Then he would behave in such a way that caused us to see him as not good enough as a father. So it was this self-perpetuating thing where every time he tried to escape how he was feeling, he behaved in a way that caused people to see him in that way.
And it's interesting because my team member, shout out to Sarai Romero, her experiences were different but similar in that she goes so far as to describe it as breaking the family curse in terms of how the behavior stops.
Breaking the generational curse, yeah.
Yeah, and so...
And that's kind of what conscious parenting is about. It's about making choices that are beneficial for you and your child.
And can you share some examples with us about, well, let's start with the overall approach. So how do we define conscious parenting?
I would define it as having an awareness of how your behavior impacts your children and understanding the emotional landscape of not only yourself, but your children.
And how does that translate into interacting with the child on a daily basis, especially when that child is dealing with its own anxiety, their own anxiety or frustration over trying to solve a problem or something that happened throughout their day?
Yeah, so emotional intelligence, I believe, is a strong aspect of conscious parenting. And this means that, in the past, parents, when a child would be experiencing anxiety in the past, parents would see, oh, they're there, it's okay. Basically dismissing how the kid felt. But a conscious parent would sit down with the child and say, hey, I know that you're feeling something here.
Yeah.
And perhaps can you describe what you're feeling? In doing this, they're getting the child to focus on the feeling rather than the circumstances. So what I generally teach is that our minds will focus on circumstances, and that brings up feelings. So when we can disconnect our mind from the circumstance and only focus on the feeling, then the feeling, which is energy, can just flow. And energy must flow. It cannot be contained. So the idea that by dismissing someone's feelings or telling them to, just choose happy, or telling them, any other dismissive, repressive instructions is not helpful to the child. But getting them to face how they're feeling allows that feeling to go away. And also with anxiety, it's about bringing them into the present moment.
Yeah.
Because anxiety is always based on thinking in the future or the past. So it's about possible future or what happened back there. And when you can focus them on their breath, you can bring them right into the present moment. Is that happening now? No, it's not.
Wow. And it's really fascinating. I'm so curious to know how teenagers receive this message.
You know, I haven't had feedback from too many teenagers, but when I spoke with some troubled teens locally, I talked a lot about emotions and emotional expression, and a lot of them had experiences with alcoholic parents who mistreated them. And for them, it was a new way of looking at the situation, a new way of understanding, because hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a conscious choice that they make. It's that there's all this, when a person goes through trauma as a child, they don't have the opportunity to express how they're feeling about what's being done to them. So that is repressed emotion.
Yeah.
And that repressed emotion can build into a mountain of feelings that then explode outward. And it's helping them to see that any expression of emotion can be positive as long as it doesn't harm yourself or any other person.
Yeah. And
So how do
yeah.
you
Yeah.
express anger in a positive way? Well, you could paint, you could write, you could journal, you could write a song, you can do all kinds of different self-expression that allows that angry energy to get out.
Awesome. All right. We're a little bit past break time. So we are going to take a brief commercial break. It's not your fault at all. No need to apologize. This is really interesting. So we're going to take a brief break for our sponsors, and then we're going to come back with more with Angela Legh. Welcome back to What the Why with Barbara Ann, and today's really special guest, Angela Legh, published author and journalist. And before the break, we were talking about some of the concepts around conscious parenting and emotional intelligence, and conversations with teens about the issues that they faced at home once you got the chance to get them to open up about why they were struggling and all of the positive ways that they can channel that energy. And it's interesting because you use the term, it's like climbing mountains, and it dawned on me, you're a mountain climber. So you are climbing mountains figuratively and literally. How did you find your interest in hiking and mountain climbing?
In the beautiful Taos area, yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead.
My reference to mountain was not really about climbing. It's just that every time a person represses a feeling, every time they hold in what they feel like saying and don't say it, they're building a mountain of repressed energy within them. And it doesn't actually stay that way.
Yes.
So it comes to a point and then it will explode outward. And we've all seen people who are overreactive to the circumstances they're in.
Yeah.
That's because they're expressing some of that repressed energy.
It's like a volcano. after a while, the pressure finally erupts.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you touched on something that came up recently with a couple of the people that I coach, and that had to do with always being told to be the good kid, always being told to be positive and to be happy, even when they weren't. And what we now call gaslighting, basically, in terms of their feelings.
Or spiritual bypass. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. See, we speak similar languages. So when you're working with parents and others around that, how do you encourage them to move from the things that they learned that were really part of their survival mode from their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents to this new way of consciously raising children with empathy and emotional intelligence and encouraging them to express what they're feeling and understand why they're feeling it?
You know, it's interesting because people my age, people my children's age, none of us, even our parents, were not taught how to truly deal with emotions. And so my first and biggest message to parents is it's not your fault. You didn't learn this. The second message is when I talk about repressed emotions, you probably don't see yourself as someone who does that. But let me illustrate for you how wide and broad that thing is. And so I'll talk about the numbing behaviors, the escaping behaviors, the suppression behaviors. And, you know, when we start saying, okay, your emotional eating, that's a repressive behavior. Your choice to work out 10 times a week because you don't want to feel what you're feeling, so you go do that instead, that's a repressive behavior. Gambling, shopping, drinking, drugs, there are so many. I did a whole article in the Los Angeles Tribune listing, and there were, in each category, there were about 30 behaviors that were taught to us by our parents because they didn't know better. So what we learned was, if you don't feel good, you better escape it in this way. So with my father, it was you escape it by drinking. With my mother, it was you escape it by denying that it exists. So none of us were given really good tools for emotional expression. And it's has caused us as a society to decide that some emotions are negative and some are positive. But emotions are just energy. And they're information. They're telling us how we feel about what's going on around us. So rather than quantifying our emotions as good or bad, what if we look at how we behave in response to our emotions? And then we can put the negative positive on that. So a negative expression of anger would be to drink and lash out at others. Whereas a positive expression of anger, we already talked about pain, you know, all the artistic expressions, but it can be as easy as getting a pillow and punching the snot out of it to just get that energy out. And that doesn't hurt you and it doesn't hurt others. So it's a positive expression.
Yeah, and like I said, you are completely speaking my language. One of the things that we talk about all the time is the situation is just that. How you feel about it is that. You can react or you can respond. And so, you know, it's the situation plus how you respond to it that equals the outcome. And so, yeah, so Saturday morning when I was really frustrated, I could have done a lot of things, but I went early to my dojo. Took it out that way. One of my favorite things that Mr. Rogers ever said is his was swimming. He would swim and
Oh,
play the
that's a
piano.
wonderful way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's really being aware
Yeah.
of how you're choosing to express that emotion. And so that self-awareness is key to conscious parenting.
So for parents who are interested in exploring this, you've written articles, but you also have your fantasy book series, which my understanding is also touches on aspects of this. So with the time that we have left, tell us about the Bella Santini Chronicles.
Okay, they're my favorite thing. So the Bella Santini Chronicles are a children's book series. They're intended for 8 to 14-year-old, so they're chapter books. Coming of age fantasy. Clean, family friendly. It's
Awesome.
really intended for kids, if a child reads it, for a child to see themselves as the main character and see themselves overcoming different adversity. And within the adversity, there's tools of how she overcame that adversity. So as they go along through the story, they're learning different tools, but instead of, someone sitting down and saying, hey, if you encounter sadness, then you could do A, B, and C to deal with it. This is living through the story, living through that sadness and using the tools, the breathing exercises, the other tools to get through it. So the books are really intended to give children the tools that they need to thrive in life.
Which is awesome. Another team member of ours, Lisa Hillerin, when she wrote a book for adults, similarly, she called it transformational fiction, because you feel like you're
That's
getting
exactly what it is. Yeah.
So I love it, and I would love to talk more with you, and I hope to talk more with you offline. But for our viewers, we're out of time. So for those who would like to contact you, what is the best way for them to find you?
So there is a contact page on my website, angelalegh.com, and I will respond. It's, I'm here to help people understand emotions.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's hard to believe it's been as long as it has been since we first connected. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen.
Me too.
Yeah, and thank you again for joining us all the way from New Mexico. That's so cool. It's so beautiful there. And thank you for sharing your personal and professional journey with us.
Thank you.
As for our upcoming guests, you really don't want to miss any of our conversations with them either. They include even more business owners, coaches, authors, technology experts, including our next show, entrepreneurs, advocates, and people who across the board overcame seemingly insurmountable challenges. Please tune in to learn and be inspired about how they did what they did and how you can move forward in your life as well. If you missed any of our past guests, you can catch all 3 seasons of our show on the What the Why page of RVN Television's website, along with some other really great content. These days, you have so many viewing choices, so thank you very, very much for tuning in, and please tell a friend or colleague about us. As a reminder, What the Why is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, both on RVN Television as well as on Roku TV. And also, as a reminder, no matter what you may be going through in your life, no matter what changes you would like to make, no matter how big or small, tune in again for more illuminating and fascinating conversations with guests such as Angela, who overcame some amazing challenges and made some significant pivots in their lives to find their purpose and live it.